Greetings, people of the interwebs. Jake here, and welcome to Volume 2 of the Curator Q&A session, where basically you find people got to submit your questions, and me and some of the other curators will answer them to the best of our abilities. Some of the curators have already answered your questions in the comment section of the post that I put on the Comics Amino app. But I figured I would do mine as a part of a ongoing series for the YouTube channel. So let me just pull up your questions and get right to it. Although there were about double the amount of questions this time around as there were the first video, so I'm going to try and fly through some of these while also still giving a fair amount of time to each question, just because I don't want this to be like a 2-hour-long video. So now the first Curator Q&A video I did for the channel was about 45 minutes to an hour. So I'd like to try and keep it around that time, so let's see what I can do here. Because I know some people have kind of given some feedback that some of the videos here on the channel have been a little too lengthy, in particular with the comic conversation videos. So if that's another concern of people's, then I'll try to cut some of the videos a little bit shorter. So any feedback is much appreciated. But anyways, let's get to the Q&A, shall we? Alrighty, so first up is J-Wing, who asks, who's your favorite Robin as Robin and their mantle? Okay, so my favorite Robin is, I would say Dick Grayson is probably the best Robin, but my favorite, I guess, Robin to take up a mantle is Red Hood, Jason Todd. So yeah. Then the next question is, I don't know the name of the user, they kind of just had like a blank username, but you'll probably know who you are by the question. Would you all like to see Sam Jackson in more films, perhaps DC? Sure. I mean, I like Samuel L. Jackson, he's a good actor, and of course, then again, he's pretty much in everything, and has been in just about everything, so I don't really know what specifically I'd like to see him in, whether it be like another comic book movie, whether it be DC or whatever. So I don't really know what specifically I'd like to see him in. But yeah, for whatever reason he pops up in a DC movie or another movie, then awesome. All right, next up, Von Doom asks, what do you think of Marvel Legacy? So I think I've mentioned this before in some of the comic conversations videos here on the channel, that I haven't really been keeping up with Marvel in the past year, just because I'm kind of fatigued on all the events that they keep doing, and some of the events might be good, some of them are probably bad, not 100% sure, but regardless of their quality, I'm kind of just tired of event after event. I want Marvel to just stop completely with their events and just focus on good storytelling on their individual characters, but that's a whole other thing that I could get into. So my thoughts on Marvel Legacy, from what I know of it, they're trying to get back to, I guess, the previous Marvel roots before they started doing all these events, so I guess it's a step in the right direction. Robin the Girl Wonder asks, what do you think of the upcoming arc in Detective Comics, The Lonely Place of Living? So with DC, that's really the main thing that I've been reading for the past year, that and independent comics. But really, even by DC Rebirth, I'll only read a handful of titles, just because I'm on a bit of a budget, so I can't read all the titles that I want to, whether it be both DC, Marvel, independent stuff. So I kind of have to be a bit picky with what I read. So I haven't read any Detective Comics. Really the only thing that I've been reading with DC are Aquaman Rebirth, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Green Arrow. I was reading Wonder Woman there for a little bit. I had to cut that though just because of budget. Flash, there might have been a couple others, but so I don't really have an opinion on the arc because I don't really know what's going on. Wanda Crystal Elemental, what's your pet peeve in comics? Events. Way too many events, like in Marvel right now. So that's definitely the main pet peeve that I have right now. Okay, so next up is King Malevolent. Do you think it's good for, or it's? Do you think it's good from DC to for DC to interact with the Watchmen? Initially, when I first heard that this was happening in Rebirth, I was like, no, this sounds like a terrible idea. But I think as long as it's handled well, then I'm okay with it. But I haven't been keeping it with the main, I guess, Rebirth story that deals with the Watchmen, so don't really have much of an opinion on it. But yeah, I think as long as it's handled well, then I'm all for it. Common King asks, do you dislike seeing someone in public wearing a, say, Batman shirt, even if they don't read comics? No, not necessarily, just because I think people can be a fan of, comic book characters even if they've never read a comic book before. Because me, myself, I was heavily inundated with the comic book world and characters before I ever started reading comics, just because I grew up in the early 90s, and so I watched a lot of, Batman, the animated series, the 90s, Spider-Man and X-Men shows. So I was always very familiar with the characters and also some of the handful of superhero movies we got before this amazing comic book boom. So, I'd wear, superhero shirts or have, toys and stuff like that. So, no, I don't think it doesn't really bother me a whole lot that people wear, a Batman shirt or Spider-Man when they don't read the comics. I think as long as they're a fan of that character in some form or fashion, then, why not? Support the characters or support what you like, and feel free to wear it on your shirt. I do it all the time with, again, comic books, movies, bands, as you can see here with my Iron Maiden shirt. So next up, Spire Warrior. Now for the age-old question, Marvel or DC? I don't really have a preference. It's kind of just time of day for me. One day I might be feeling more in a Marvel mood, and then the next day I'm more in a DC mood. So, and honestly, I prefer independent comics over Marvel and DC both. So that's my preference, but when it comes to Marvel and DC, I don't really have one. It's just whatever I feel like reading that day. Captain Wolfman asks, lost my spot. If you could take a DC character and put them in Marvel, and put a Marvel character and put them in DC, who would it be and why? That's a really good question. So I'd like to take characters I'd like to take a character from, say, DC, put them in Marvel, and vice versa, but characters that would fit in each respective universe. Or, I don't know, maybe take someone like Batman, put him in Marvel, but put him with a character who's kind of the complete antithesis, so someone who's a bit more optimistic and kind of cheerful or fun, just to kind of see that, the kind of relationship and banter between those two characters. Or really even take Batman with someone, say, like Tony Stark, where they're similar in some ways, but Tony Stark is, again, a lot more, I don't know, less dark and broody compared to Batman. So I think it'd be interesting to have those two characters kind of interact. And as far as a Marvel character in DC, I don't know, maybe you take Punisher and put him in Gotham with Batman's rogues and just have him go to town against all of Batman's rogues, because, well, most of the rogues wouldn't last very long once he started doing his vigilante justice. So I think that'd be kind of interesting, just to see a completely different, I don't know, just something completely different. Have Punisher in a different universe, but still street level, and going up against villains that I think he could kind of go toe-to-toe with, both physically and mentally, who aren't too powerful with metahuman abilities or anything like that. So Agent 4 and 7, if you could put any non-comic character into the comic universe, who would it be and why? It's another really good question. So I'm trying to think of some of my favorite non-comic characters. Or characters who have been in comics. That's really tough. Because I feel like my first instinct was to go to Star Wars, but Star Wars has a plethora of comics with a lot of the main characters, so I feel like that would be a very good answer, or a very interesting answer anyways. Favorite character, or any non-comic character, put them in the comic universe. I don't know. Okay, I'd maybe take someone like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings and put him into really either Marvel or DC, because I love Lord of the Rings, in particular Gandalf. I find him an incredibly compelling and interesting character, especially if you are familiar with his character outside of the movies, which, he's great in the movies, but there's a lot more to his character. If you've read the books or are familiar with Tolkien's work and the appendices and all that stuff. But just to spare you all a great in-depth explanation on Gandalf and all that, I just think it would be cool to see him in a comic, whether it be like Marvel or DC, because he is insanely powerful. So to see him go up against, I don't know, like street-level villains, or even some of the more, meta-human, like, kind of villains in the upper echelon of the Marvel and DC universe, I think it'd be cool to see him go toe-to-toe with some of them. Lychee, or Lachie, not entirely sure which is the correct pronunciation, asks, cheese dip or cheese whiz? Which I think is a true age-old question that I think we all ask ourselves before we go to bed at night. Cheese dip all the way. Like, cheese whiz is fine, but yeah, usually if someone's just handing me like a platter of cheese dip with some chips, or cheese whiz and chips, I'd be like, yeah, you better hand me that platter of cheese dip and chips all the way. Deathstroke the Terminator asks, how do you feel about the current state of events of Marvel? I think I kind of summarized that a little bit in the previous question about just kind of my pet peeves with like all the events going on in Marvel. And I also feel like some of the writers are kind of spread thin, where they have really good talented writers, but they're doing like 4 or possibly even more titles. So I think it's hard for them to write consistently good quality stories when they're writing probably multiple stories for Marvel, on top of like their creator-owned stuff for like Image or Vertigo or whatever. So I think that's one of the issues, and again, the events, but also I just think that, I don't know, that Marvel seem a little unfocused in terms of like what they want to do, and again, they have a whole bunch of titles that I think are unnecessary. Like there's like, seems like half a dozen Deadpool titles or Spider-Man titles, and why do we need that many of Spider-Man or Deadpool, or really any character, or even teams? I don't think we need like 6 different Avenger roster comics. That's unnecessary. But again, that's just me though. So another question by Lachie. Do you guys want any more musicians or bands in comics, and who? Yes, I would love to see a lot of my favorite bands or musicians in comics, just because I'm a huge music person. Again, as you can see here with my Iron Maiden shirt, my all-time favorite band, which they're one of the bands who I'd like to see in a comic. And there have been some comics made about bands, like there have been Kiss comics, Slayer, I believe, has a comic that's still going. And if it isn't still good, I think it was only like a 3-4 issue run. So yeah, I'm all for doing like comics, whether it's like grounded in reality or just kind of like something more along the lines of Death Clock, the show that was on Adult Swim like a few years back, where it's just this crazy over the top show, but in comic form of like say some of these heavy metal bands just going on tour and going through crazy adventure. I think would be really cool. Next up, T Paper 2. What villains would you want to face a hero who aren't arch nemesis? Or nemesis? Nemesi? Whatever the plural is. Ooh. I think I'd like to see someone like Doctor Doom go against Iron Man, because they're both very similar, both incredibly intelligent, or even Doctor Doom against Doctor Strange, because both are some of the best sorcerers in the Marvel Universe. So yeah, I think either one of those two would be great to go against each other. And I'm sure they fought each other in the comics before, but I just want to see those two go head to head without like being a part of a team battle or anything like that. Just Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom, just head to head. I don't know, maybe like a DC villain against a DC hero. I don't know, maybe put like Joker against Green Arrow. Because I feel like Green Arrow wouldn't really take Joker's crap and put a few arrows in him. Maybe not kill him, but put him down a little bit more than what Batman would do. Max Punisher asks, what are some of the worst titles coming out of Rebirth or Legacy? So again, I haven't been reading Marvel in a while. I actually dropped all my Rebirth stuff just because at the time I wasn't able to keep up with any comics for that matter. So I think I'm going to just start picking everything back up in trades. But from what I was reading of Rebirth, I hadn't read a single bad title, so can't really give you specific titles on which are the worst in really either. Because I haven't been reading any Legacy and didn't read any bad comics out of Rebirth. So I guess check out both and just see what works, see what doesn't. Frame Easy, what motivates you to keep reading comics? One, to learn more about certain characters, because there have been times where I'll pick up a comic on a specific character, whether it be a Marvel or DC character, because maybe I read them, like, say, a character like, or I guess a good example is, like, say, like a new Marvel or DC movie or show is coming out about a character I'm unfamiliar with. So it'll kind of make me want to read a few comics on that particular character to get a little bit more familiar with him before the movie comes out. And then other times just because I enjoy reading a certain storyline, whether it be a Marvel, DC, or independent comic. So I guess the main reason is just because I enjoy reading, so that kind of motivates me to read more. I wish I could afford to read more Marvel, DC, independent stuff, but and also just had more time to read more, but sadly I do not. But yeah, I guess the main thing is just because I enjoy reading. Challenger asks, what's my spot? What do you think of self-published material? So I actually know a guy who self-published his own comic. I actually have the physical copy of his first volume. Because I know most of his stuff he publishes online on some website, and he's actually been talking with Image Comics to get his comic picked up and published through them. And I'm actually going to try and get an interview with him on my own YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out whenever that happens. Sometime, hopefully in the near future. Just got to get our schedules together. I'm all for it because I know. It can be hard, whether it be a comic or just a regular book or novel, to get published by some of these bigger companies. And so I feel like nowadays it's not only easier to self-publish your own, material, through the internet or whatever means. But in a way, I think it's maybe in a way a little bit more beneficial. I could be wrong, but. Yeah, I'm all for it. I don't think someone self-publishing their own comic or book or whatever makes it any less, important or gives it less credibility. That was part of your part of the question that you asked in the comment section. But yeah, more power to him. X asks, top 3 comic movie recommendations and why? So at the top of my head, Scott Pilgrim, V for Vendetta, and Dredd. Scott Pilgrim, one of the reasons is it's one of my favorite comics, but also the movie, I never in a million years thought that someone could adapt the comics at all, and if they did, that they could do it well. But Edgar Wright somehow was able to find a way to perfectly adapt the comics into live action and perfectly cast it as well. Like everyone, all across the board, perfect casting, and really even I'd say about the first half of the movie was almost verbatim to the first 2 or 3 volumes of the comics. So yeah, that's one of the reasons, and also it's a great comic and movie. V for Vendetta, I think that's a very relevant topic in both comic and movie form. Both are fantastic as well, but especially nowadays, I think with the current political situation, I think V for Vendetta is a bit more. I mean, I think it's always going to be relevant, but I think in particular nowadays it's a very relevant topic of discussion. But also, like, again, the movie's got fantastic dialogue. Hugo Weaving as V does not get enough credit. He's a phenomenal actor and really brought that character to life without, showing his face, showing any emotions, or again, emotions with facial expressions or anything like that. I thought was really impressive. And then Dredd, my God, Carl Urban nailed that role. Because I feel like it's a fantastic movie as well, by the way. But I think it's one thing for an actor to, much like Hugo Weaving in V for Vendetta, is to have have their face covered up the entire time. Especially someone like Carl Urban, who's he's a pretty handsome guy. So I feel like a lot of actors in his position would have easily been like, yeah, I'll wear most of the movie, but I gotta show my pretty face to people and let them know that it's me acting in this role and that I'm a handsome guy. But he fully committed to the role of keeping the helmet on throughout the entire movie, and I think he just perfectly embodied Judge Dredd from the comics, and they're just fantastic movies. Tien asks, or Tyen, when can I become a curator? You can just send me a whole bunch of money, and I'll make sure you become a curator. But in all seriousness, I think right now we're pretty set with our current lineup of curators, and I don't know when we'll be sending out any other or any more applications. But keep a lookout, because we always every now and then we'll send out applications for more curators. Eddie asks, DC or Marvel? Again, my main preference is independent comics, but between Marvel and DC, it's just time of day. Another question by Connor McKing. What are your thoughts on filler comics? As a whole, I'm not a huge fan, but every now and then it is, I don't know, kind of nice just to have a couple issues where it's not really dealing with anything too important with the main story. It's just kind of the character or characters, depending on what you're reading, just kind of interacting with each other. So I guess as a whole, it just depends on who the characters are, or who's writing the filler comic issue or whatever. But I don't know. I guess as a whole, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it all depends on the execution. Next up is Ragnar, the one above all, who asks a myriad of questions, all fantastic though. If you could time travel, where would you go? That is a very hard question to answer, just because me being a huge history person, there's so many different points in history I'd like to go and visit and just kind of spectate. But I guess the first thing that kind of comes to mind is I would like to go to Rome during the height of the Roman Empire, just because that's one of my favorite periods in history to learn about and study is kind of the during antiquities. So yeah, probably during the Roman period, kind of during the height of their reign, and just kind of marvel at the amazing architecture, the culture, and just kind of how sophisticated the culture, culture and civilization was at the time. In his next question, top 10 non-comic films. I don't know if I can give you. I don't know, on the spot. You put me on the spot. Okay, no particular order. I'm going to see if I can name 10 at the top of my head that are non-comic. So I'm going to go ahead and throw Lord of the Rings, all 3 movies in one, because I don't know if I can pick one particular one. And technically they were all filmed at once, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit and say they're all one film, just split into 3. So Lord of the Rings, because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and those movies are absolutely phenomenal. Probably the best movie, one of the best movie trilogies in history. Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back, just because as much as I love Star Wars, I think that is in my opinion, the best Star Wars movie, and it's just my personal favorite. Gladiator, fantastic movie. The Departed, great Martin Scorsese movie. And also I like kind of gangster mob movies, especially if they're directed by Martin Scorsese. Braveheart, great movie. Jaws, one of my all-time favorites. The original Clash of the Titans, I believe it was made in 1981 or 1982. Fantastic movie. Don't bother with the remake. It's terrible, in my opinion. Trying to think of some other movies that are non-comic book movies. Ugh, it's a lot harder than I thought. I wish I was closer to my Blu-ray DVD collection. In Bruges, I'm gonna throw that in there. It's a very underrated Irish movie that I think everyone should see. Got 2 more left. God, I feel like this should be a lot easier. Crap. My mind's drawing a blank. I'm gonna throw a more recent movie in this list. Baby Driver. Saw that recently, back in June. Phenomenal movie. Another Edgar Wright movie that I can't recommend enough. God. Probably should have thought about this more before just kind of recording on the spot. Another movie. Crap. This is harder to do on the spot. Trying to think of another movie. Just dead silence. Jurassic Park. I don't know why it took me so long. Jurassic Park. Classic. Okay, favorite sport. Not really into sports ball. I don't dislike it per se, just could never get into it. Favorite football team, again, not really into sports. I don't even know if I could name many football teams. And he also asked, if you could eat 3 foods for the rest of your life, what would they be? Oh, because I'm not a very picky eater, so pretty much as long as it's food, I'm pretty content. Aside from seafood, not big on seafood. So I'm just gonna throw some three random foods. Love gyros. That'd probably be one. Love me some tacos. And pizza, because who doesn't like pizza? What are you most afraid of? I don't have any, deep fears or anything like that, but I'm not a fan of spiders. So I'll use spiders as my answer. Favorite smell? Probably bacon. Like when you first wake up in the morning and you get the whiff of bacon because someone's making bacon for breakfast. One of the best smells. Do you believe in God or something? I'll just say this. I'm all for people having faith in a higher power or God or something like that, but not a fan of religion, if that makes any sense. I feel like religion just complicates things when, just agree to disagree in whatever deity or higher power you believe or don't believe in. What do you hate to answer? I guess so. I'm kind of a private person, so I guess like super personal questions I'm not a fan of. What movie made you cry the most? So my soul is ginger and dead inside, so crying and other feelings are kind of a foreign concept to me, so I don't emote very well. But I'd say the movie that I can think of at the top of my head that maybe made me feel the most or get closest to crying would probably be the first 5 minutes of Pixar's Up. Like, that's a pretty sad opening to a movie. Favorite and least favorite type of music. Favorite, heavy metal. It's my jam. Rock and heavy metal. Least favorite. So I'm not a fan of rap, country, hip hop, country, pop. I might go with pop just because I feel like there's no substance to a lot of modern pop music. And even though I may not like other genres, like country or rap or hip hop or anything like that, I feel like they at least are talking about something, whereas pop is all about just, hey, look at me, I'm an attractive person, lyrics that have no substance, but people can easily kind of be like, oh, that resonates with me, which if it does, then, hats off to you. I'm not knocking people for their preference in music, it's just not for me. All fantastic questions, by the way, Ragnar. And then District Rules, would you rather live in Marvel, the 616 universe, or DC? I feel like I'd maybe fit in a little bit more with Marvel. Because I feel like some, there are certain DC characters that are a little, like Batman, that's a little too brooding, and I feel like I wouldn't really... I think it'd be an interesting person to talk to, but I don't know if I'd want to, live in the DC universe. I don't know, so yeah, I'll go with Marvel. Nerd Stuff asks, if you were in charge of the Justice League movie, what would the plot be? I don't know. Maybe dance off? Let's not even have, Darkseid or any kind of cosmic threat, just dance off. Aquaman, Superman, having a big dance off. They can bring Batman into the mix. Maybe he'll stop being all dark and broody. But I guess serious answer. Probably some along the lines where they're fighting some kind of cosmic threat, like a Darkseid or I don't know, maybe Vandal Savage or something like that. That could be cool. The OG Vigilante. How did you find about Comics Amino, and what do you love most about this community? Found out about this app from a NerdSync video, which is a fantastic YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know about it, check it out. What I love most is just kind of interacting with you people, whether it be in chats or the comment section, just kind of discussing our mutual love for all things comics. Then Steak Mafifi asks, who's your least favorite Marvel character and why? I don't know, because I'm trying to think of a character who I've actually read a comic of, because I feel like I'd be a little unfair to say a character that I've never read about or, seen a movie or TV show of is my least favorite. I don't know. I'm gonna... I don't know. I'd maybe have to think about that one a little bit more to give you an exact answer. Um, Dark Monitor. What one superhero team would you want to hang out with for a day? Probably. I don't know. Probably like the Guardians of the Galaxy, especially if we're using the roster from like say the movies. Just because I feel like they'd be a cool bunch to hang out and just kind of joke around, cut up with each other, and maybe me and Star-Lord could exchange music. I could give him my iPod of like 6,000 songs, be like, yo, dude, check this out. So I think that'd be cool and a fun team to hang out with, because I feel like they'd be less likely to go into danger compared to, like, say, the Avengers or Justice League, where, again, they're typically being very selfless, fighting for the good of humanity, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think I'm that good of a person. I kind of want to stay away from fighting Thanos or Darkseid or potential life-ending threats. Tef Adam asks, if you were to write a story about any 5 comic villains, who would you put on the team? Doctor Doom, because I feel like he's probably definitely my favorite Marvel villain, and I think Marvel's best villain. Would also put on the team Lex Luthor, because I think both of those characters are highly intelligent, and I think it'd be interesting to see those two characters interact with each other. They'd probably be the brains of the operation. I'm also mixing and matching Marvel and DC. He said it was okay in the comment section, so don't shout at me in this video, people. I'd also like to put on the team Green Goblin or Norman Osborn. I guess either one, or I guess it's the same person. So yeah, I'll try and balance it out with having most. At least half Marvel, half DC as well, or the best I can. Then maybe put like I'm trying to think of another good DC villain that I think would work well with this team. I feel like Joker would be fun to put on this team just because it'd be completely different from the dynamic of the other characters. I'm trying to think of someone who would work well with this team of villains. Let's throw Black Manta in the mix. 'Cause he's a very cunning, intelligent guy, and he's almost brought the world to its knees, especially if you're reading the current Aquaman Rebirth comic. Then let's throw in just like I don't know, kind of a weaker villain that's just kind of there for fun. I don't know, like trying to think of a really lame villain. I don't know. How about that one? Maybe not a lame villain, but just a out there villain, Mr. Mixolydic or whatever. Is that DC fairy? I don't know what he is exactly, but throw that guy in the mix. That'd be weird and interesting. Sirius Albert Ben Drake. What's y'all's favorite superhero meal or goodies? Shawarma. I mean, come on. Everybody's seen Avengers. And shawarma actually is really delicious. Jimmy asks, who would you like to see, or would you like to see a Black Wolverine? If it fits a certain storyline, sure, but I don't want Marvel to just add a Black Wolverine for the sake of adding diversity. So I feel like that's kind of the wrong way to go about adding diversity in, anything, whether it be a movie or a comic or whatever. If it fits the story, then yeah, by all means. But yeah, if they're just doing it for the sake of doing it, then no. Another question by Steak Mafifi. If you could remove one Marvel hero and one DC hero, who would it be and why? I don't know, because I feel like there are certain characters that, even though they might be kind of silly, like Matter Eater Lad or Ice Cream, I kind of like the fact that those weird characters exist. So I don't know. I guess I don't really have a good answer for you. 'Cause I feel like even the weirder, kind of sillier characters are kind of fun and charming in their own way. And then Dr. DC, last question of the day, by the way, or night. Dr. DC asks, would you rather have an intimate, wink wink, nudge nudge, relationship with Martian Manhunter in woman form or Mystique in man form? It's a very difficult question and situation you've put me in. I feel like regardless of which answer I give, it's going to be weird. So you know what? I'm going to make it even weirder. Both. Weren't expecting that, were ya? Alright, everybody. That wraps up this Curator Q&A video. Hopefully you all have enjoyed, and hopefully I made it interesting for you all. Even though there were probably far too many dead silent moments during the recording, but yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, those, like, again, creating like top 10 or top lists of anything is kind of hard, especially without, taking a whole lot of time to really, I don't know. It's just really hard to do like a top 10 movies or albums or comics or something like that without taking like hours and hours to really think about it. So apologies for the silent moments. But aside from that, hopefully you all have enjoyed, and if you will do, feel free to leave comments below on what you thought. And if there weren't any questions that I answered, because I think I answered all of them, but if there weren't, feel free to ask them again, either in the comment section of this here YouTube video or the comment section of the post that I did on Comics Amino, and I'll answer them to the best of my abilities. But feel free to keep supporting this channel with the likes, the comments, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you all have any other suggestions for content to add on the channel, feel free to submit those, again, in the comment section of this here video, or just submit them to me on my wall, or PM me or something like that, suggestions for more content to add, or people you would like to see on Comic Conversations, or maybe bug the other curators to finally let me interview them for more curator interview videos like I did with Bob and Frank Castle. And then before I start wrapping this up, if for whatever reason you want to hear more of me talking, you can check out my own YouTube channel, Pasty Pal Productions. I'll leave a link in the description below, where I do movie reviews, and I host my main podcast where me and my friends talk about a little bit of everything: comics, movies, TV shows, music, all that stuff. Then I also have another podcast that you can find on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, called Shogun's Gateway to Anime, which is all about anime and anime-related content. And lastly, you can follow me on Twitter at IrishmanJake, and just, tweet me things, your thoughts on movies, or just, tweet me general thoughts as a whole. But yeah, that wraps up this video. Hopefully you all have enjoyed, and again, just leave comments below on your thoughts on this video, or just more content you'd like to see added. So, until next time, everyone, cheers.